Washington, D.C., April 5th, 1933. A man walks into his bank. He wants to withdraw his gold, $5,000 worth, his life savings. The teller looks at him, shakes her head, points to a poster on the wall. Executive Order 6102, signed yesterday by President Roosevelt. All gold must be surrendered to the government by May 1st, 26 days. The penalty for keeping it, 10 years in federal prison, a $10,000 fine. That's $240,000 in today's money. The man asks what he gets in return, $20.67 per ounce. The teller slides paper dollars across the counter. He takes them. He has no choice. Here's what nobody tells you about that day. Less than a year later, the government changed the official gold price from $20 to $35 per ounce, a 70% increase overnight. Everyone who surrendered their gold lost 40% of their wealth, not to inflation, not to market forces, to a government decree. And it gets worse. The people who didn't comply, the ones who hid gold in safe deposit boxes, buried it in their backyards, stored it overseas, most of them kept it. Estimates suggest only 25% of privately held gold was actually turned in. The rich knew. They moved their gold offshore before the deadline. They hired lawyers. They found loopholes. They used the legal system to protect their wealth. The middle class trusted the government. They complied. They got robbed. But here's the thing. That was 1933. This is 2025. It can't happen again, right? Wrong. It's already happening. Just with different assets, different methods. Same playbook. I'm going to show you how governments confiscated private wealth in the past. I'm going to show you how they're setting up to do it again. And most importantly, I'm going to show you how to make sure you're not on the losing side when it happens. Stay until the end. Because what you own right now might not actually be yours. You need to understand something about government confiscation. It never happens randomly. It always follows a pattern. And that pattern starts with crisis. The Great Depression began in October 1929. By 1933, unemployment hit 25%. 1 in 4 Americans had no job. Banks were failing by the hundreds. People were starving in the streets. Hoovervilles, breadlines, Dust Bowl. Complete economic collapse. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was inaugurated on March 4th, 1933. His first act? Declare a national banking holiday. Close every bank in America. 4 days later, Congress passed the Emergency Banking Act. It amended the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. Here's the key. The Trading with the Enemy Act was designed to stop Americans from trading with enemy nations during wartime. But Roosevelt and Congress expanded it. They said the economic crisis was equivalent to war, and they declared that American citizens hoarding gold were enemies of the state, not foreign powers, not saboteurs. American citizens protecting their own wealth, enemies. On April 5th, Executive Order 6102 was issued. All persons must deliver all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates to a Federal Reserve Bank by May 1st. Exceptions were minimal. You could keep $100 in gold coins, about 5 ounces. Rare coins with collector value, industrial gold for dentists and jewelers, that's it. Everything else had to be surrendered. In exchange for paper Federal Reserve notes, at $20.67 per ounce, the same price gold had been pegged at since 1900, for 33 years. Now here's where it gets criminal. Once the government had the gold, Congress passed the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, January 30th. It changed the official price of gold to $35 per ounce, a 69% increase. Think about that. The government forced you to sell your gold at $20, then immediately revalued it to $35. They didn't just confiscate your gold, they stole 40% of your purchasing power, legally. And they did it under the guise of emergency powers, national crisis, economic necessity, for the greater good. The same justifications every government uses when it steals from its citizens. You're thinking this was a long time ago. Different era, different rules. We have constitutional protections now, civil rights, due process. But let me ask you something. What happened during COVID? Businesses shut down by government decree, churches closed, travel restricted, bank accounts frozen for protesters in Canada, emergency powers activated worldwide, constitutional rights suspended, all legal. All justified by crisis. Governments don't need to change the playbook, they just need a crisis, real or manufactured. And they get unlimited power. Now let's talk about what Executive Order 6102 really accomplished. The official reason was to combat deflation and restart the economy. By taking gold out of circulation, the Federal Reserve could print more dollars without being constrained by gold backing. More money supply, more inflation, higher prices, economic stimulus. But here's what actually happened. Wealthy Americans moved their gold offshore before the deadline, to Switzerland, to London, to safe deposit boxes in Canada. They had advance warning, they had resources, they had lawyers. The middle class didn't. They heard the order on the radio, read it in newspapers, had less than a month to comply, and most of them did. because they trusted the system. One example, a man named Frederick Barber Campbell, New York lawyer. He wanted to withdraw his gold from Chase National Bank in September 1933. After the deadline, he had a certificate for 27 gold bars, worth about $5,000. Chase refused. They were required by law to report large gold requests. Federal agents met Campbell at the bank. He was indicted the next day for failing to surrender his gold. The prosecution eventually failed on a technicality, but the government kept his gold anyway. Another case. A Swiss firm called Schweizerische Kreditanstalt. They stored $12.5 million worth of gold double eagles with an American company for safekeeping. 1933. The government confiscated all of it, $12.5 million, worth $812 million today. The legal justification? Executive Order 6102. The practical reality? The government needed gold to back new currency printing, and they took it from whoever they could reach. But here's what most people don't know. The vast majority of individuals who kept their gold were never prosecuted. Why? Because the government couldn't find it. Gold is portable, fungible, anonymous. You can bury it, hide it in walls, store it in a safety deposit box under a fake name, send it overseas. The only people who got caught were the ones making large transactions through banks, trying to move gold through official channels, the ones who played by the rules. The lesson? When the government comes for your assets, compliance is for suckers. The wealthy already know this. They structure their wealth in ways the government can't easily touch. Offshore trusts, foreign corporations, physical assets in multiple jurisdictions. Legal complexity. The middle class keeps everything in their own name. In domestic banks, fully visible, fully accessible, fully confiscatable. Fast forward to today, 92 years after Executive Order 6102. Gold ownership is legal again. Gerald Ford repealed the order in 1974. You can buy as much gold as you want, store it wherever you want. Nobody's coming to take it. Except that's not entirely true. In 1980, Congress passed the Comprehensive Forfeiture Act. It gave the government sweeping powers to seize assets in criminal cases, including gold, including cash, including anything of value. Civil asset forfeiture. The government doesn't need to convict you of a crime. They just need to suspect your assets are connected to criminal activity. And they can take everything. Your car, your house, your bank accounts, your gold. You have to prove your innocence to get it back. Guilty until proven innocent. Since 2000, federal and state governments have seized over $68 billion in assets through civil forfeiture. $68 billion. Most of it never returned. Most cases never went to trial. The government just took it and kept it. But civil forfeiture is small scale. It targets individuals, criminals, drug dealers, tax evaders. It's not systemic confiscation, not yet. The real threat today isn't physical gold confiscation, it's digital asset confiscation. And it's being built right now. With Central Bank Digital Currencies, you've heard the term, CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. It sounds boring, technical, harmless, like some wonky monetary policy thing that doesn't affect you. Wrong. A CBDC is programmable government money. Every dollar you earn, every dollar you spend, every dollar you save, tracked in real time by the government on a ledger they control, with rules they can change instantly. Right now, cash is anonymous. You can use a $20 bill without the government knowing where you got it or what you spent it on. Privacy, freedom, autonomy. A CBDC eliminates that. Every transaction is recorded, every purchase tracked, every dollar assigned to your identity, permanently, irrevocably. And here's the scary part. It's programmable. That means the government can decide what you're allowed to buy, where you're allowed to spend, how much you're allowed to save. They can freeze your account instantly. No court order, no due process, no appeal. Think I'm exaggerating? Let's look at China. They launched the digital yuan in 2020. 7 trillion yuan in transactions by June 2024. That's $986 billion. It's the largest CBDC pilot in the world. And it's a surveillance state's dream. Every transaction tracked. Social credit scores linked to spending. Dissidents cut off from the financial system instantly. No cash to fall back on. No privacy. No escape. The Chinese government can see every purchase, every donation, every transaction. And they can turn off your money with a keystroke. You speak out against the government, your digital wallet stops working. You attend a protest, your money's frozen, you donate to the wrong cause. Transaction denied. This isn't theoretical, it's happening right now. And Western governments are watching, learning, planning. The European Central Bank is piloting the digital euro. India launched the digital rupee in 2022. It's now the second largest CBDC pilot. Nigeria launched the Naira. Jamaica has Jamdex. The Bahamas has the sand dollar. 137 countries representing 98% of global GDP are exploring CBDCs. The United States isn't far behind. The Federal Reserve has been researching a digital dollar for years. Project Hamilton, the MIT Digital Currency Initiative, the Innovation Center at the New York Fed, multiple pilot programs testing the technology. In 2022, President Biden signed an executive order directing federal agencies to explore a U.S. CBDC. The framework was clear: fast payments, financial inclusion, national security, economic competitiveness, all good things, right? Except buried in that framework is the real goal: control. The ability to program monetary policy at the individual level, to implement negative interest rates by making your money disappear over time, to restrict purchases the government doesn't approve of, to freeze accounts of political dissidents. In July 2025, the House of Representatives passed the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act. It prohibits the Federal Reserve from issuing a CBDC to individuals. It was a Republican bill. It passed 219 to 210, almost entirely along party lines. Why the opposition? Because half of Congress wants the government to have that power, to track every transaction, to control every dollar, to turn money into a tool of social control. The bill now sits in the Senate, where it will likely die, because there are powerful interests that want a CBDC, banks that want to eliminate cash, governments that want total visibility into every transaction, intelligence agencies that want financial surveillance. And when the next crisis comes, and it always comes, emergency powers will be activated, a CBDC will be implemented overnight, and every dollar you own will be converted into programmable government currency. You won't have a choice, just like in 1933. Here's where it connects to Executive Order 6102. The same legal framework that allowed Roosevelt to confiscate gold still exists today. The Trading with the Enemy Act, emergency powers, national crisis declarations. In 1933, the enemy was deflation, hoarding, economic collapse. Today, the enemy is cybersecurity threats, terrorism financing, money laundering, tax evasion. Same playbook, different words. And just like in 1933, the wealthy are preparing. They're moving assets offshore, setting up foreign trusts, buying citizenship in countries with strong property rights, diversifying across jurisdictions, creating legal complexity that makes their wealth hard to seize. The middle class is doing nothing because they don't see it coming. They think it can't happen here. They trust the system. They believe in the rule of law, but laws change, especially during crises. And emergencies are easy to manufacture. A cyber attack on the banking system, a collapse of a major financial institution, a terrorist attack, a pandemic. Any of these can trigger emergency powers. And once those powers are activated, property rights disappear. Now let's talk about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the decentralized alternative to government money, the thing that's supposed to protect you from confiscation. Except most people don't actually own their crypto. They think they do, but they don't. If you bought Bitcoin on Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, or any other exchange, and you left it there, you don't own it. The exchange owns it. You have an IOU, a claim, but not ownership. And that means the government can seize it with a warrant, with a court order, with an executive order, just like gold in 1933. In fact, it's easier, because crypto on exchanges is already digital, already tracked, already visible to regulators. The government doesn't need to raid your house, they just need to send a letter to the exchange. And your Bitcoin disappears. This has already happened, multiple times. The U.S. Marshal Service seized billions of dollars in Bitcoin from Silk Road, from Bitfinex hackers, from other criminal cases. They sell it at auction. They keep the proceeds. But those were criminals. Drug dealers, money launderers. That's different, right? Wrong. Because the legal framework for seizing crypto doesn't require a criminal conviction. Civil asset forfeiture applies to cryptocurrency just like it applies to cash and gold. Suspicion is enough. And if there's one thing governments are good at, it's manufacturing suspicion. Environmental regulations. Cryptocurrency mining uses too much energy. National security. Bitcoin enables terrorism financing. Financial stability. Crypto threatens the banking system. Any of these justifications can be used to restrict crypto ownership, to force exchanges to freeze accounts, to confiscate digital assets. And with a CBDC in place, the government won't even need to seize crypto. They'll just make it illegal to convert it back to dollars. No off-ramp, no liquidity. Your Bitcoin becomes worthless, not because of market forces, because of government decree. This is the real threat. Not outright confiscation, but regulatory strangulation, making crypto unusable by cutting off access to the traditional financial system. And if you keep your crypto on an exchange, you're completely vulnerable. Now here's the pattern that everyone misses. In 1933, gold confiscation didn't happen in isolation. It happened after a banking crisis, after emergency powers were activated, after the government convinced the public that extreme measures were necessary. Today, we're in the setup phase. Banking crisis. Silicon Valley Bank collapsed in March 2023. Signature Bank, First Republic, all gone. Emergency measures, FDIC takeovers, bailouts, crisis averted. For now, cybersecurity threat, ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure, Colonial Pipeline, JBS Foods, healthcare systems, power grids. The threat is real. The justification for digital currency is ready. Financial surveillance, Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering regulations, know your customer requirements, suspicious activity reports. The infrastructure for tracking every transaction already exists. The CBDC just makes it automatic. And here's the final piece, public acceptance. In 1933, most Americans supported Executive Order 6102 because they believed it was necessary, because they trusted Roosevelt, because they thought it would save the economy. Today, most Americans will support a CBDC because it will be convenient, because it will be sold as safer than cash, because it will come with incentives, a universal basic income pilot program, instant government payments, financial inclusion for the unbanked. By the time people realize what they've given up, it will be too late. Their money will be programmable, their transactions tracked, their financial autonomy gone, and the people who saw it coming and prepared will be the only ones left standing, just like in 1933. So what's the solution? How do you protect yourself from digital confiscation in 2025? First, self-custody. If you own crypto, get it off exchanges. Now, not tomorrow, not next week. Today, use a hardware wallet, ledger, Trezor, cold card, something you control, where you hold the private keys. Because here's the rule, not your keys, not your coins. If someone else holds your private keys, they own your crypto, not you. And that means the government can seize it with a court order. Self-custody means you control the keys, you control the access. Nobody can freeze your account, nobody can confiscate your assets without physically taking the device from you. And even then, if you've backed up your seed phrase properly, you can recover your funds. But self-custody comes with responsibility. If you lose your seed phrase, your crypto is gone forever. If someone steals your hardware wallet and your seed phrase, your crypto is gone forever. If you die without giving your family access, your crypto is gone forever. That's the trade-off. Freedom and control versus convenience and safety nets. Most people choose convenience. They keep their crypto on exchanges because it's easy, because they can trade quickly, because they don't want to deal with hardware wallets and seed phrases. And that's exactly why they'll lose everything when confiscation comes. Second, diversification. Not just across assets, across jurisdictions, across custody methods, across legal structures. If you only own assets in the United States, you're vulnerable to U.S. government confiscation. One executive order, one emergency declaration, and everything can be frozen or seized. But if you have assets in multiple countries, you create complexity. You create legal barriers. You make it harder for any single government to take everything. This doesn't mean hiding assets illegally. It means structuring ownership in ways that are legal but distributed. Foreign bank accounts, foreign brokerage accounts, foreign real estate, foreign citizenship, foreign trusts. The wealthy do this automatically. They have Swiss bank accounts, Cayman Island trusts, Liechtenstein foundations, Singapore brokerage accounts, real estate in Dubai, citizenship in Malta or Portugal. They're not evading taxes. They're creating redundancy so that if one government goes rogue, they still have options. They still have access. They still have wealth outside the reach of any single authority. The middle class keeps everything in one country, one bank, one brokerage, fully visible, fully accessible, fully confiscatable. Third, physical assets, things the government can't seize with a keystroke, land, precious metals, art, collectibles, tools, skills, things that have value regardless of what the government says. But here's the key. Physical assets need to be portable or hidden. If the government knows you own gold and knows where it is, they can take it. Just like in 1933. That's why wealthy collectors store art in free ports. Secure facilities in Switzerland, Luxembourg, Singapore, where ownership is private, where physical access is required to seize assets, where multiple layers of legal protection exist. That's why precious metals dealers recommend allocated storage in foreign vaults, not in your local bank's safe deposit box, because the government can access those with a court order. But assets stored overseas in non-extradition jurisdictions are harder to reach. And that's why skills and knowledge are the ultimate asset, because you can't confiscate what's in someone's head. You can't freeze their ability to produce value. You can't seize their human capital. If you're a doctor, you can practice anywhere. If you're a programmer, you can work remotely for foreign companies. If you're a plumber, people always need plumbing. Skills that are valuable globally are the one asset no government can take. Fourth, legal structures. The rich don't own anything in their own name. They use trusts, LLCs, foundations, offshore companies, not to evade taxes, to create legal barriers between themselves and their assets. If you own real estate in your own name, the government can seize it with a lien. If you own it through an LLC, they have to pierce the corporate veil. That takes time. That takes court battles. That creates friction. If you own stocks in your own name, the government can freeze your brokerage account with a court order. If you own them through a foreign trust, they have to navigate foreign legal systems, foreign courts, foreign jurisdictions. This isn't about hiding assets. It's about making confiscation difficult, expensive, time-consuming, so difficult that the government moves on to easier targets. Because governments always go after the low-hanging fruit first, the people who comply, the people who keep everything in their own name, the people who trust the system. The people who create legal complexity are the ones who keep their wealth, every time, throughout history. Now let's address the uncomfortable truth. Most people won't do any of this. They'll read this script, they'll nod along, they'll agree with everything, and then they'll do nothing. Because it's hard, it's expensive, it's complicated. It requires thinking about scenarios they don't want to believe are possible. It requires admitting that the government might not protect their interests. And so they'll keep their crypto on Coinbase, they'll keep their money in a domestic bank, they'll own everything in their own name, and when confiscation comes, they'll be shocked, angry, outraged. But it will be too late, because the time to prepare for confiscation is before it happens. Not during, not after, before. In 1933, the people who moved their gold offshore before April 5th kept it. The people who waited lost it. The people who trusted the government got robbed. In 2025, the people who are moving assets offshore now will keep them. The people who wait will lose everything. The people who trust the government will get robbed. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The pattern is always the same. Crisis, emergency powers, confiscation, compliance, redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the government and the wealthy elite who saw it coming. You're thinking this is paranoid. This is conspiracy thinking. This is fear-mongering. But answer me this. What's the downside of being prepared? If I'm wrong, you have diversified assets, self-custody of your crypto, legal structures that protect your wealth, skills that are valuable globally. You're more secure, more resilient, more financially independent. What's the upside if I'm right? You keep everything, while everyone around you loses their savings, their retirement, their financial freedom. Asymmetric risk, everything to gain, nothing to lose. That's the logic of survivors. That's the logic of people who study history and learn from it. Let me give you a modern example. Canada, February 2022, trucker protests in Ottawa. Protesters blocked streets, demanded an end to COVID mandates. Peaceful protest, civil disobedience, protected by the Canadian Charter of Rights. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. For the first time in Canadian history, he ordered banks to freeze the accounts of protesters and anyone who donated to them. No court order, no due process, just government decree. Hundreds of bank accounts were frozen, credit cards canceled. People couldn't buy groceries, couldn't pay rent, couldn't access their own money because they participated in a political protest, and it was legal because emergency powers override constitutional rights, just like the Trading with the Enemy Act in 1933. This wasn't Venezuela, this wasn't China, this was Canada, a Western democracy, a member of the G7, a country with strong rule of law and property rights, and the government froze bank accounts of its own citizens for political dissent. Now imagine that same scenario with a CBDC. The government doesn't need to ask banks to freeze accounts, they just do it. Instantly. Automatically. Your digital wallet stops working. Your money disappears from the ledger. You can't buy food, can't pay bills, can't function in society. No court, no appeal, no due process. Just code. Just programmable money doing what it's programmed to do. This is what's coming. And most people don't see it because they think it can't happen here. They think governments respect property rights. They think the rule of law will protect them. But laws change, especially during emergencies. And emergencies are easy to manufacture. So here's my challenge to you. What are you going to do in the next 48 hours? Are you going to move your crypto off exchanges and into self-custody? Are you going to research foreign bank accounts and offshore asset protection? Are you going to learn a skill that's valuable globally? Or are you going to scroll to the next video and forget everything you just heard? Because that's what most people will do. They'll agree with everything. They'll recognize the threat, and then they'll do nothing. Because preparation is hard, and denial is easy. But here's the thing. The people who prepared before Executive Order 6102 kept their wealth. The people who waited lost everything. The people who trusted the government got robbed. The people who are preparing now will keep their wealth when digital confiscation comes. The people who wait will lose everything. The people who trust the government will get robbed. History is a map, not a guarantee, but a map. And the map says that governments always confiscate private wealth during crises. They always use emergency powers. They always target the middle class. And they always let the wealthy who prepared in advance keep their assets. You can choose to ignore the map. You can choose to believe it won't happen again, You can choose to trust the government, or you can choose to prepare, to diversify, to create complexity, to take control of your financial future. The choice is yours. But you need to make it now, not when the crisis hits, not when emergency powers are activated, not when your accounts are frozen. Now, one last thing. Executive Order 6102 was repealed in 1974, 41 years after it was enacted. Americans could own gold again, legally, freely. But the legal framework for confiscation was never removed. The Trading with the Enemy Act still exists. Emergency powers still exist. Civil asset forfeiture still exists. The infrastructure for confiscation is still in place. It just hasn't been used on that scale since 1933. Yet. But with CBDCs being developed worldwide, with financial surveillance infrastructure already in place, with emergency powers being normalized through COVID and other crises, the tools for confiscation are more powerful than ever. In 1933, the government needed physical access to seize gold. They needed warrants. They needed enforcement. They needed cooperation from banks and citizens. In 2025, the government needs none of that. With a CBDC, they just flip a switch. Your money stops working. Your transactions are blocked. Your assets are frozen instantly, automatically. No physical enforcement required. No court orders. No cooperation needed. Just code. Just programmable government money doing what it's programmed to do. And that's why this is more dangerous than 1933. Because it's easier, faster, more comprehensive, and harder to resist. In 1933, you could hide gold, you could bury it, you could move it overseas. You had options. In 2025, with a CBDC, you have no options. Unless you opt out before it's implemented. Unless you move assets into self-custody now. Unless you create structures that protect your wealth now. And later will be too late, just like it was in 1933. The asset that protected Americans in 1933 wasn't gold stored in a bank vault. It was gold stored overseas, in foreign accounts, under foreign legal protection, outside the reach of Executive Order 6102. The asset that will protect Americans in 2025 isn't crypto stored on exchanges. It's crypto in self-custody, in hardware wallets, under your control, outside the reach of government confiscation. And the people who understand this now, who act on it now, will be the survivors. The ones who keep their wealth, the ones who come out ahead. Everyone else will be a statistic. Another victim of government confiscation. Another example of what happens when you trust the system instead of protecting yourself. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Because the next videos will show you exactly how to implement these strategies. How to set up self-custody. How to structure foreign assets. How to create legal protection. This isn't theory. This is the survival manual, and the people who read it first are the ones who survive. See you in the next video. And remember, Executive Order 6102 happened. It will happen again. The only question is whether you'll be prepared.